China lies about a lot of things. It is no secret that China's Communist Party has been involved in a whole host of human rights violations, war crimes, crimes against humanity, genocide, all of which are definitely things that they would like to hide from the rest of the world. But there are other things that China lies about too, and some of them are not quite so obvious. Here are 7 very different things that China lies about. Number 1. The Olympics. China is currently preparing to host the 2022 Winter Olympics. They were originally scheduled for 2023, but Beijing decided that they wanted to try to capitalize on the success of their COVID-19 response, or at least their image of having done a successful job responding to COVID-19. As you may recall, in February of 2020, shortly after Wuhan went into lockdown, President Xi Jinping toured the city, met with medical workers and local residents, visited a wet market where the first cluster of cases had been identified, and he declared that thanks to the efforts of the heroic Chinese people and the correct decisions made by the Communist Party, China had everything under control. This was obviously not true at the time. COVID-19 was spreading rapidly across China and around the world, but it was a good story and China pushed it hard. A few months later, the World Health Organization praised China's response as a model for the world. And in May 2020, a team of international experts led by the WHO toured China to investigate how the virus emerged. They concluded that the virus was most likely transmitted from bats to humans via an intermediary animal at a market in Wuhan, ruled out the possibility of a lab leak, and also, incredibly, seemed to exonerate China for any missteps in its early handling of the outbreak. All of this culminated in what has been dubbed, quote, the greatest propaganda campaign in history, with the country flexing its apparent success in hosting the recent Winter Olympics. Despite all evidence to the contrary, the Chinese government continues to claim that the country has essentially eliminated COVID-19 within its borders. The measures taken to prevent the spread of the disease, such as mass testing, quarantine, and travel restriction, have severely disrupted daily life of millions of people living in China. However, in order to project an image of normality before the eyes of the world, the Chinese government actively censors social media posts, especially on WeChat, Weibo, and YouTube, that reveal the harsh impact of these policies. And while foreign journalists in China are usually allowed to report on COVID-related issues, they are expected to toe the party line. When foreign journalists attempt to publish reports that contradict official accounts, their press credentials can be revoked, forcing them to leave the country. Foreign correspondents who remain in China are often kept under close surveillance and harassed by Chinese authorities. 2. The environment. According to the World Health Organization, air pollution is one of the greatest environmental threats to human health, contributing to the deaths of some 4.2 million people worldwide every year. The problem is particularly severe in China, where coal burning and rapid industrialization have resulted in some of the world's most polluted cities. For years, Chinese officials routinely falsified data related to air quality in an effort to appear as if they were meeting their own clean air targets. One widely publicized case involved 7 employees of the Ministry of Environmental Protection who were fired and demoted for fabricating data on hazardous pollutants in 2012. Li Jun, the former Vice Minister of Environmental Protection, was given a death sentence for accepting bribes in exchange for turning a blind eye to rampant pollution in the northeastern province of Guilin. Case saw 11 individuals, including senior executives at 6 major chemical companies, convicted for bribing government officials to overlook serious safety violations. In addition to these prosecutions, China has implemented a number of measures to improve air quality, including closing down heavily polluting factories, promoting the use of cleaner energy sources, and investing in public transportation. While these efforts have had some success, China still faces significant challenges in terms of air quality. One complicating factor is the decentralized nature of China's pollution monitoring system, with over 300,000 monitoring devices, operated by various local governments, leading to inconsistencies in data collection and reporting. Moreover, pressure remains on local officials to maintain economic growth, which can lead to lax enforcement of environmental regulations. These problems are not limited to air quality. Water pollution is another major concern in China, where rapid industrialization and urbanization have put a heavy strain on the country's water resources. According to a 2017 government report, 40% of China's rivers and 50% of its groundwater were polluted. Dyes, heavy metals, detergents, and other pollutants have contaminated many of China's waterways, making them unsafe for drinking or agricultural use. While the Chinese government has made some progress in addressing water pollution through investments in wastewater treatment and stricter regulation of industrial discharges, the problem remains widespread and persistent. One notable case of water pollution occurred in 2011 when a pipeline carrying 40,000 tons of benzene leaked in the northeastern province of Guilin, causing widespread contamination of the Songhui River. The spill raised concerns about the safety of China's aging oil pipelines and the country's capacity to respond to environmental emergencies. Despite these challenges, the Chinese government remains committed to improving environmental quality as part of its broader sustainable development agenda. The 13th Five-Year Plan. set ambitious targets for reducing pollution and conserving resources, and the 14th Five-Year Plan is expected to build on these efforts. Nevertheless, the scale and complexity of China's environmental challenges mean that progress is likely to be gradual and uneven. 3. How much money it wastes. According to official figures, China's central government spent around $18 billion on overseas aid between 2000 and 2018. Estimates from outside China suggest that the actual figure could be much higher. In 2019, the Congressional Research Service estimated that China's total overseas aid budget, including non-governmental assistance, could range anywhere from $50 to $100 billion annually. In fact, a 2021 study by the Aid Data team at the University of North Carolina found that China surpassed the United States in 2009 to become the largest provider of foreign aid in the world. At the same time, however, China has maintained strict secrecy around its foreign aid program, making it difficult to determine the true extent of its spending. This lack of transparency has fueled suspicions that China is using aid as a way to further its own interests rather than purely altruistic motives. For example, China has been accused of using aid to secure access to natural resources in developing countries or to gain military influence in strategic locations. Despite these concerns, China has continued to expand its aid program in recent years. In 2020, despite the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, China pledged to provide $10 billion in assistance to Africa, its largest recipient. China's approach to foreign aid is distinct from that of traditional Western donors, such as the United States and European countries. China emphasizes non-interference in the internal affairs of recipient countries and focuses on providing tangible assistance such as infrastructure projects and educational scholarships, rather than promoting democracy and human rights. Some argue that this hands-off approach has been more effective in building relationships with developing countries and has helped China to gain greater influence on the global stage. Others criticize China for using aid as a form of neocolonialism and for failing to address the underlying causes of poverty and inequality. The opacity of China's aid program makes it difficult to assess the effectiveness of its assistance and the extent to which it is achieving its stated goals. 4. Freedom of speech. China's government strictly controls all forms of media and communication within the country, including television, radio, newspapers, magazines, the internet, and social media. Any form of public expression that is critical of the government or its policies is swiftly suppressed. Citizens who engage in anti-government speech or who express opinions that are deemed to be politically sensitive may face severe consequences, including imprisonment, torture, or even execution. To maintain control over the flow of information, the Chinese government employs a variety of tactics, including censorship, propaganda, surveillance, and the use of technology to monitor and control online activity. China has one of the most sophisticated censorship systems in the world, which is known as the Great Firewall of China. It uses a combination of software and hardware to block access to websites and online content that is deemed to be harmful or subversive. The government also maintains a large network of informants and agents who monitor public spaces, internet cafes, libraries, and other public areas to identify and suppress any anti-government activity. In recent years, the Chinese government has stepped up its efforts to control online speech and has imposed strict regulations on social media platforms. For example, all social media posts must now include the real name of the person posting, and users who post false or misleading information can be banned. Despite these efforts, some Chinese citizens continue to find ways to express themselves freely online. However, the risk of being caught is high, and many people choose to self-censor their speech out of fear of reprisal. 5. The number of children per family. In October 2015, China's Communist Party announced significant changes to the country's one-child policy, ending decades of strict family planning measures that had profound implications for Chinese society. The new policy, known as a two-child policy, allows most couples to have 2 children, a departure from the one-child policy that was first introduced in 1979. The one-child policy had been implemented to curb population growth in a country of over 1.3 billion people and had led to forced abortions and sterilizations, as well as a skewed sex ratio due to a preference for sons. However, as China's population began to age and the economy slowed down, the government recognized the need to allow for more population growth. Under the two-child policy, couples where one parent is an only child are now permitted to have 2 children. Previously, these couples were limited to only 1 child. While the policy change was seen as a step towards greater reproductive freedom for Chinese citizens, it did not mark a complete reversal of the one-child policy. Couples who do not meet the criteria for having 2 children are still limited to 1 child, and there are ongoing concerns about the continued use of coercive measures to enforce family planning goals. Despite these limitations, the two-child policy has allowed many families to have the number of children they desire, and it has also had some positive impacts on China's population dynamics. For example, it has led to a slight increase in the birth rate and has helped to alleviate some of the pressure on China's healthcare and education systems. 6. How much corruption there is. Corruption is a deeply ingrained problem in China that has persisted despite the best efforts of the Communist Party to stamp it out. The country ranks 174 out of 180 countries on Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index, suggesting that it is one of the most corrupt places in the world. The issue is so pervasive that it has been estimated that nearly half of all businesses operating in China have to pay bribes to function effectively. The consequences of corruption are far-reaching and can undermine the rule of law, erode public trust, and hinder economic development. Despite the severity of the problem, China's leaders have been reluctant to acknowledge the extent of corruption and have been slow to implement meaningful reforms to address it. In recent years, China has made some progress in tackling corruption, such as by establishing a dedicated anti-corruption agency and introducing tougher penalties for corrupt officials. However, these measures have had only a limited impact, and corruption remains a major problem in China. 7. The number of its soldiers. China's military personnel numbered 2,035,000 active soldiers in 2021, according to official statistics released by the International Institute for Strategic Studies' Military Balance Report. However, analysts believe that the true number of Chinese military personnel may be significantly higher. Estimates from the Pentagon suggest that China may have as many as 900,000 active military personnel. If true, this would make China's military the largest in the world. China's People's Liberation Army has undergone a massive expansion in recent years, driven by concerns over territorial disputes in the South China Sea and the rise of China's regional rivals such as Japan and India. The PLA has also been modernizing an increasingly capable force with a growing number of advanced fighter jets, warships, and nuclear warheads. However, China's military spending remains a closely guarded secret, and analysts have difficulty obtaining accurate data on the size and capabilities of the PLA. In addition, China's military is deeply intertwined with the ruling Communist Party, making it difficult to separate military from political considerations. Despite the opacity surrounding China's military, the country's growing military capabilities have raised concerns among its neighbors in the United States. Many countries in the region are investing heavily in their own militaries in response to China's growing military power and the potential threat it poses to regional stability. Thank you for watching, and make sure to subscribe to catch our latest videos.